Fantasy role-playing is akin to a living novel where the players are the main characters. Everyone combines to write a story which is never short of adventure. They help to create a new land and strange new tales. Then we continue with Professor Tolkien's legacy. Each module is based on extensive research and attempts to meet the high standards associated with the Tolkien legacy. Rational, linguistic, cultural, and geographical data are employed. Interpretive material has been included with great care and fits in defined patterns and schemes. ICE is not intend it to be the sole or proper view. Instead, we hope to give the reader the thrust of the creative processes and the character of the area. Remember that the ultimate source of information are the works of Professor J.R.R. Tolkien. Posthumous publications edited by his son Christopher shed additional light to the world of Middle-earth. These modules are derived from The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings, although they've been developed so that no conflict exists with any other sources. Adapting this module. Like the rest of the series, this module is designed for the use with Middle-earth role-playing system, game MERP, or the more advanced Master system, but it is adaptable to most other major fantasy role-playing games. Statistics are expressed on a closed or open-ended scale using a 1 to 100 base and a percentile dice. No other dice is required. That's one of the reasons I kind of liked Rollmaster and Middle-earth when it first came out, was the fact that we only really needed a D100 or a pair of D10s, and that's what we were using back then, the pair of cheap old D10s that came out of one of our other game boxes. Although, you could get stuff from these people, but anyway. Warlords of the Desert. This is an adventure module. It says it right on top, right? Another adventure module from ICE set in Middle-earth. Now, I read what I read because a lot of those entries appear in the beginning of most of these books. And what they wanted you to know is that even though they filled in the blanks, they fluffed up sections or areas that were vaguely touched on. It wasn't because they just pulled it out of thin air. They had done a lot of research. They had read a lot of material. They'd gone to Tolkien's library contributes to see his notes and on anything they could find in that area. So they actually had people doing some research, and it showed it make a difference. It helped make all this stuff connect like it should. It's a real different way of world building. I mean, most of our game systems today, most of the game systems that were created, well, they were pure fantasy worlds. This is world building 101 where they went out and they built from scratch on a theme or an idea or a concept, and over time it expanded. So if we look at, we look at Faerun in Forgotten Realms. Well, that is 100% fantasy written by a handful of people back when TSR first started cranking stuff out. It was the next evolution of gaming for Dungeons and Dragons. It came out in tandem with Dragonlance at the time. Different people working on a different setting with the same set of mechanics. Greyhawk was still around, but it wasn't getting didn't get the traction. One of the reasons that Greyhawk or Forgotten Realms and Dragonlance took off was because they were also tying them in with novels. So a person who didn't necessarily play the game could read a book and instantly relate to at least the scenery and the world itself. Those of us who were playing, we read the books, were because and looked at them as not just an entertainment but as a gaming aid, because it really gave you a much deeper feel for the world itself. This is what makes MERP so player friendly, I guess, is because how many gamers can honestly say they haven't read the novels? How many people out there are going to sit there and say, I didn't read at some point The Hobbit or The Lord of the Rings, or I didn't see the movies? More likely you've seen more, especially this younger generation, more likely have seen the movies and not read the books. But the fact of the matter is, you've got a lot more to connect with than you would with a dozen other, 100 other systems. it is what it is, right? I was briefly talking to somebody on a blog yesterday about Dune. Dune's coming out, and with a movie, another take on the movies, or they're exploring the idea for a take on the movies. And one of the reasons, as a game system, it I never played a good game, a good Dune game system. I think there was at least two, and that's Dune, by the way, not Doom. And in part because the people that were creating that just didn't get the connectivity, and they didn't apply it appropriately. They just didn't take advantage of that, and it it cost them. Just on a similar topic, I was talking to somebody else in uh, the RPG Brigade's venue about, or forum about, Judge Dredd, and I liked the comics. The movie was pretty good. Stallone, I think he did a good job. I'm not a big fan of Stallone as an actor, but he did a good job playing Judge Dredd. He got, and the creators got a really good eye view of that world, and that neo post apocalyptic cyberpunk world that was created in the comic books. I understand that they made a couple RPGs for that, but I've never seen them, and I've never played them, and I don't know how well they did, because not that because obviously they're not as mainstream as the other stuff that I've been exposed to, and that's true. I mean, how many hundreds of game systems are out there that I have yet to see or touch? Uh, Vaguely heard mentioned anyway. The Warlords of the Desert is a fantasy adventure module from Middle Earth. It's got a nice little map in here. It's set in the Far Harad, and this is an area to the far east, on the other side of a really big desert, from Umber and eventually Mordor and Gondor. So some of these people in the movies, there was a contingent of Herodium, or whatever they call them, Southrons, and depending on who you ask, that were marching to the Black Gates when Frodo and Samwise and Gollum were up looking at the gates trying to figure out how to get in, and those folks are from this general region, this section of the Middle Earth, anyway. So we got their general information, the politics of Far Harad, the economy, the capital city, the hills, the differences in the people, the culture of the Hardwith, which is the deep desert, their appearance, attitudes and outlook, family life. Talks about the roles of wealth, diet, leisure, the city of Bosher Azar, the Kadara shop districts, going into more detail on the capital city and merchants' quarter, caravan ground, so on and so forth. Embassy to Far Harad, player characters. It's like this sort of thing. Player characters. The characters used in these adventures should be a mix of professions and abilities. The scenarios are designed for characters of first, third, and fifth level, but a party of 6 PCs with some more or less powerful than that should be able to handle the challenges provided, as long as the players choose their actions with care and the GM monitors and balances the game. Each should provide an enjoyable session of play. PCs involved. All right. And that's actually be a topic of another blog I think I should do. Uh, and I think I've mentioned this once or twice before. We get these modules, these adventures, and a lot of them they'll say it right up here on the front of the cover, levels, da da da. And then how many people though have taken that module? And I've done this. I've done it. I've taken an old module that was geared up for much lower level characters and tweaked it. I ratcheted it up. In one case, all I did was basically double everything in it. I don't mean numbers, I mean stats. So the increased all the NPCs in it to be more of a challenge towards the players. On another occasion, I took the story, the module itself, and I re-envisioned it. Instead of having the players go through what the book said, I used that as background material for a different adventure that involved a much more powerful character, and the players were just running through this world, so to speak, this piece of the world that was conveniently created for the Batman GM. Like I said, the lazy GM maybe, because it's just makes sense. And I like reusing things, and never understood the concept of buying something and using it once and throwing it on a shelf or throwing it away. It happens too much. Anyway, so I got the the key NPCs, the Prince's Ambassador, important South runs, so on and so forth. Tales of the Travelers. Then we get into more of the NPCs. They got some depth. The setting. See, I mean, the first half of this goes on and just setting you up. Then we get into, the individual adventures right here, right? The Bandits of the Hills, Tales of a Desert Outing, I love some of these pictures, right? Great artwork. Like I said, a lot of them were done by the same person, and I know somebody told me once who that was, but I never quite keep a good memory of names in my head. So, the Bastion, Southern Hospitality, Tale of Carlos' treachery, more encounters, aids to achieve their goals, starting the players to task. So blah 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 blah. Alice in the Woods. Good all around. Nice color map. Talking about that last night too, about how ICE really outdid themselves with good maps. And this is just the one in the back of the book. A lot of their stuff. Excuse me. And I gotta find those. I got them in a folder somewhere in storage. I'll get them and show you a couple of them because they're outstanding. The bigger module source books came with these maps that were easily this big, and you can make great wall hangings. As a matter of fact, a couple of them, that's what they did for a number of years, was made basically a fancy poster on the wall of my room when I was growing up, or various places thereafter, which is why they got separated from the original books. And to avoid losing all these things, I tended to put them all in one spot. So I just got to find that one spot again, right? As an adventure goes, this is a more traditional module that you find from D&D, but it still has a lot of material from the background, a lot of material on the area and the region. It's set in a desert setting, so I have used this on one occasion that I can think of as a module for a backstory module for a campaign I was running in Dungeons and Dragons, where the characters went into basically a desert area, and they diverted from the plan. I had a plan that had no intentions of going anywhere near this particular location. It was just a little corner of a map I'd made, and for some reason I don't understand, everything just kept funneling that way. And one day they decided to go out and do something, and I thought, oh great, no, what do I do? So I ran to the shelf and I pulled this, and I said, booyah. Don't overwork. As a GM, I can't emphasize that enough. We all start out with these grand schemes and plans, and I developed that open sandbox philosophy and embraced it. I love the mechanics, love the detail. I just don't have the time to spend 50 hours working on a project only to have the players blow through it in 20 minutes. And I've done it, and it's happened. Using it and reusing material is what it's for. My gosh, do that and take advantage of it anyway. Great module, great adventure in any fantasy role playing. Matter of fact, this would even be adaptable for some science fiction, like Traveler and space opera, and Star Wars. If you really want to go there, learn to adapt and use your material over in interesting ways. You won't ever be disappointed, and you'll find yourself revisiting those dusty shelves more than you think.